Okay, welcome to this incredible presentation. I'm here with my friend and mentor, Srikumar Rao, and we have some very interesting information for you. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Before we get started, I know we have a lot of certified public accountants and lawyers who are getting continuing education credit. So if you came in through CPA Academy, we'll be asking some very difficult polling questions. So brace yourself for these because they're so hard, and then you're going to get credit if you answer them, whether you answer them right or wrong, by the way. So before I get started, if you have a question for Professor Rao, you can click on the question inverted pyramid that you see in the rectangle, type in your question, and then we will answer your question. And the harder the question, the better the answer. So we want to hear some very difficult ethics questions, questions with no answers for Professor Rao. I wanted to mention next week I'm going to be covering with Steve Evers the new pension IRA contribution and other rules under the more recent changes to the Secure Act. Ken Crotty's going to cover Cuperts and Grats in a couple of weeks. And then in 3 weeks, I'm going to cover 8 steps to a successful Florida estate plan. And when this presentation is over at noon, if you want to stick around, I'm going to show you the newest update to our Estate View software and invite beta testers. So once upon a time, about 15 years ago, I was at a conference in New York, and the speaker said, I just met probably the most intelligent and engaging author that I have ever been exposed to, and everyone here should immediately buy his book, Are You Ready to Succeed? And she explained that Professor Rao had grown up in India, had received a physics degree in India, and a full ride to come to Columbia University, where he received an MBA and then a PhD, and then went on to be a successful executive in the film industry, and then went back to teaching. And when he went back to teaching, he looked for an opportunity to apply the ancient classic ways of thought, ways of living, ways of success to what he found to be a very extreme and cluttered American Western existence. I read the book. It changed my life significantly. I reached out to Professor Rao, sent him an email, and said, I read that you have weekly courses in New York. If you ever go monthly, let me know. I can't go to New York City weekly. So about 2 years later, I think in 2012 or 2013, I got an email from him. Hi, Alan, I've changed my course format. It's now 3 3-day weekends. Well, I went to that, and my life changed even more considerably. So if you've read Professor Rao's work, or you've seen his YouTube videos, or you've had the opportunity to participate in one of his amazing programs, then you're going to get a lot out of today. If you haven't had any of these opportunities, or you've had very few of these opportunities, then we may have opened a real big door for you. Something else I just want to mention before we get into it is that I've really enjoyed the newest book, Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots. It is not as difficult a dive or as challenging a dive as Are You Ready to Succeed? It is deeper and more detailed than his book, Happiness at Work. All 3 of these books are absolutely essential. But what I really like about Modern Wisdom, Ancient Roots is the way he's divided it up into so many delightful chapters where you could just read one chapter a night and then go to sleep and kind of wake up with more thoughts about the chapter you read. So there are 62 chapters. Now I will warn you though, you'll race through them and then you'll want to come back and think about them more carefully. So I will close off the distraction of a screen there. Sri Kumar, that's probably the longest introduction you've ever endured. Welcome. Welcome to our program. And what would you like to open with?
My pleasure, Alan. And I must tell you that I've been on your podcast a number of times, and I've really had a ball every time. And I get such interesting questions, many of them coming from left field. It's just a pleasure to engage with your audience. So, with that said, I'm looking forward to a most entertaining evening. I know it's going to be entertaining on my side. I'm not going to say anything about your listeners. So, whether you get lynched or you get bouquets, we'll find out.
Exactly. So, Sri Kumar, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We know that you got a physics degree at Delphi University, looked into the nature of reality, and then came to the United States. Tell us a little bit more about your childhood, about growing up in India, what that was like, and how that may have caused you to be the giant in thinking that you are.
Okay. So, I grew up in India. My father was a government bureaucrat, and my mother was a homemaker. We were not poor, but there wasn't a whole lot of discretionary cash lying around. So basically, you didn't go around and buy things because you thought, hey, it's a good thing to have, or things on a whim. It's very, very carefully budgeted. And among other things, for example, was books. I always loved books, so my father made me a member of several libraries. But we didn't buy books. In India in those days, you didn't buy books because books were expensive. And if you bought a book, then you treated it with respect, which means you didn't mark it up, you barely creased it, you make sure the pages weren't folded, and so on. So I had a lot of respect for books, respect quote unquote, and respect basically meant that you kept it as new as the day you bought it. So very different now. Now I read a book, if it's a book that I value, it's it's dog-eared. I highlight extensively, I write on the margins, I put other things that work. So there's been a sea change in my thinking, if you will. The reason I mention all of that is that when I got a science talent scholarship, it came with a book grant. And with my very first book grant, I went out and got the Feynman Lectures in Physics, which is a classic. And I still have those books that I purchased, must have been a good 60 years ago, and I still have them on my shelf. So that was the environment I grew up. But the more important point is that my mother was a very spiritual lady, and there were a whole bunch of really important spiritual figures who were a part of my life growing up. Mahesh Yogi, for example, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who is an international figure, was a regular part of my house. Of course, I just knew him as an uncle type figure with a white beard who, gave me cookies or candies or so on. This was in the days before he was discovered by the Beatles and Mia Farrow and became an international celebrity. So people like that, many of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna's direct disciples, they were all enlightened beings. And, I just knew them as people who, I could play around with. But they were immense spiritual personalities. And I have to believe that what they radiated in some way shaped me. And it's much later that I recognized their greatness and what they had to contribute to mankind. And they were just part of my life growing up.
What specifically do you remember as a young teenager that they said or that they did that caused you to?
Not a whole lot, Alan. I mean, they said and they gave talks, and I'm sure they were learned talks, but it just flew past me because I had no conception at all. In fact, it's only now, after so many decades, that I can recognize what towering personalities they were. So there is something about these sages, Alan, just being in their presence affects a transformation. And you may not be aware of that transformation till years, decades after they've gone. But that influence is always there.
Super.
And it's getting stronger and stronger, because while I like them as they were nice elderly uncle, grandfather type figures, I now recognize that they were towering spiritual personalities, and they're still very much there. They're not there in flesh, but their presence is very much there. And I try to bring that into my writings.
And you have beautifully. So Sri Kumar, your new book, the first chapter is called Engineering Change Overnight.
Hmm?
And the third chapter is called The Marvelous Prison Boxing You In.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say a few words about those two chapters, especially for those who may just be joining us for the first time and aren't familiar with your writings?
Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example for the first one. Most of us think, oh my God, human beings, once you get to a certain age, and it's early, you're kind of stuck. And then you are the way you are for the rest of your life. And, that's even in our language and our culture. For example, how many of you believe that you can't teach an old dog new tricks? You're kind of stuck in there, and you're not going to change. Actually, that is a flat out mistake, because I can testify personally that thousands of people have taken my programs and they testify, yes, my life has changed. In fact, someone who you know very well, she is a member of your professional community, and she took my course in large part because you recommended it. And she said, hey, there is a new me. And even my kids are asking, hey, this is the new me. And I never want to go back to the old me again. That happened very fast, within a matter of weeks. So for those who think change takes a long time, I want to invite you to what Ramakrishna, another Indian sage, said. Imagine you have a cave, and it's in a side of a mountain, and for thousands of years it's been blocked. There was an avalanche or something, and rocks covered it up. And then you remove the rocks, and all of a sudden you're in the cave. And when you remove the rocks that covered the mouth of the cave, and you take a torch inside, does the darkness vanish little by little because of the thousands of years that it's been covered up, or does it vanish instantly?
Instantly.
In exactly the same way, the problem that you're facing is you've got an erroneous way of thinking about many of the things in your life, and indeed about life itself. And when you change that thinking, bingo, the false conceptions go away, and you find that there is a tremendous change. It happens instantly. In classical Indian thinking, there is an example of that. So you're really scared, and have been scared for years because there's a great big snake that's outside your door, and you don't want to get bitten by a snake. So you're always in fear, and you use the back door rather than the front door. And one day somebody comes up and grabs you by the throat and say, hey, come with me. And he takes you up to the snake and shines a light on it, and you see it's a rope, it's not a snake. The moment you see that it's a rope, not a snake, what happens to that fear that's been in you for months or years? Goes away instantly, doesn't it? It's exactly like that. So there are very powerful methods of seeing the universe. And I come from the Hindu tradition, so that's what I draw from. But I must say that though I'm not an expert on any tradition, I have read extensively in all wisdom traditions. And there is in the mystic literature of all the traditions, they're essentially saying the same truth in different words. And what I've done, and if you found power in my books and my courses, the power comes from them, because these were truths discovered and revealed by immensely powerful masters. They just use different languages and different examples. And what I'm very good at is I'm a translator. I take these great truths and use examples and exercises which modern people in a post-industrial society can relate to. But the power comes from them. That's why I can confidently state that, yes, my course and teaching will change your life, because I'm borrowing from these great masters. No, no false ego involved. I do believe that I'm a very good translator, but that's what I am. The ideas are theirs. I just put it in language appropriate to the audiences that I deal with.
Okay, I'm going to do the first polling question for those CPAs who need credit. That is, the answer is E, all of the above. The questions are, Sri Kumar Rao A was born in India. B has a physics degree from Delphi University. C has an MBA and PhD from Columbia University. D is a best-selling author. And E, all of the above. Back, Josh? What's that? Okay. We are back. So, Sri Kumar, the new book, what did you like best about the new book? Because I know one of the things that you taught me is that when you write, it's not necessarily you writing. When you speak, it's not necessarily you speaking. It's the universe speaking through you.
Correct. Yes.
So when you wrote this book, what surprised you the most, or what did the universe communicate to you?
I can't say that anything surprised me. I just found that I was able to take some very powerful concepts and put them in language that people could easily understand and relate to. What has happened subsequently is a number of people have come up to me and said, boy, that was so powerful. It was almost like a blow to the solar plexus. And they felt that these ideas would basically get them to look at life in a completely different way, had a powerful, powerful impact on them. And I'm getting that from a number of people who have read this new book. So is that true? I don't know. It's all a subjective experience. How did you feel? Did you feel that there were ideas there which really grabbed you by the throat and said, oh my God, everything I thought I knew about the world is all wrong?
It was definitely a nice, what I liked about it was the bite size approach to it. One of the things I liked was chapter 31, how to have a terrific day every day. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Certainly. Now, when I'm giving a public talk, I always ask everyone, hey guys, how would you like to have a terrific day every day? And everybody raises their hands. Who doesn't want to have a terrific day every day? Everybody does. And I tell them it's really very simple to have a terrific day every day. And I'm going to share it with you, and I'm going to share it with the audience right now. The way to have a terrific day every day is to get up in the morning, collect yourself, pause for a moment, and decide that you are going to have a terrific day. It's as simple as that. Now, if it's as simple as that, why don't people have a terrific day every day? That's because they confuse two things which they want with having a terrific day. These two things don't have anything to do with your having a terrific day, but you mistakenly believe that they do, and that's why you don't have a terrific day. What are these things that you believe are necessary for you to have a terrific day? You believe that in order for you to have a terrific day, number one, things should happen that you want to have happen. And number two, things should not happen that you don't want to have happen. Okay? So you get up in the morning and you say, I'm going to have a terrific day. And you get into your car and you pull out, and somebody honks you and then speeds and side swipes you and goes past. And you've got a brand new Tesla, and all of a sudden there's a deep gash running all along the side of the Tesla, and the review mirror is broken off and is dangling down there. And the person went by so fast that you couldn't get the license plate number, and it didn't stop, it just vanished. And here you are, and you're proud of your Tesla, and you're annoyed, and you're angry, and so now think about it. What you've just done is you allowed this occurrence to steal your terrific day from you. Okay? Now, I understand you got a new Tesla and now it's broken. So, you have to take it back to the shop and get it repaired, and you'll be out some money, maybe your deductible or more. And there's the hassle of dealing with the insurance and there. So, it's going to take time and effort and money. Yes, that's going to happen. But why should you allow this to steal your terrific day from you? You allow it to steal your terrific day from you because you have never thought about it, that this is what is happening. And you never took the decision, hey, look, I'm not going to let this affect me. If you're smart, you'll recognize that I've decided to have a terrific day. And the universe being what it is, there will be feces falling from the sky. So because I'm smart, I'm going to plan for it in advance and say, this is going to be a terrific day. Feces is going to fall from the sky. And I am going to have to spend a couple of hours on my terrific day cleaning up the feces that's going to fall from the sky. And I'm going to have a terrific time while I'm doing it. And if you budget for that in advance and recognize that that is the nature of life and stuff will happen that you'd much rather not happen, but hey, that's life. I can't control it, and I'm not going to let this unfortunate occurrence steal it. So going back to the example with the car, we'll take it for granted that there's an inconsiderate jerk who is driving that other car which slammed into you, and he caused the damage and went on. If you get all upset and so on, you're allowing this inconsiderate jerk to steal your terrific day from you. What a stupid thing to do. Why would you do that? The only reason you do that is because you haven't thought about it and you haven't recognized that this is what you're doing. So understand, okay, this is a stupid jerk and I can't be responsible for his actions, and he's going to do what he's doing, and I'm going to protect myself from the adverse consequences as best as I can, but I'm not going to let him steal my terrific day. And then all of a sudden you'll find that shit happens, but you don't have to get upset and riled up and so on. You're going out there having a perfectly wonderful time, and in your wonderful time, you're having to spend some time cleaning up the feces that comes. It's not that difficult if you give thought to it in advance and recognize that you're allowing a lot of things and a lot of jerks steal your peace of mind, and you determine, I'm not going to do that. Then you'll find that every day is great. Can I give you an example?
Please.
Okay. So what happens is I've taught at many of the world's top business schools, Alan, and my course is among the most popular and highest rated at those schools. I've taught at Columbia Business School, at London Business School, at Kellogg, at Berkeley, at Imperial College. And as you can imagine, when you teach at top business schools, students who go off and they get jobs, and many of them got jobs in the financial industry, investment banking, venture capital, private equity. These are not warm, fuzzy places. So I can't even begin to tell you how many examples and tales I've heard about nasty, toxic bosses. Somehow or other, the financial world is full of nasty, toxic bosses. So I remember one girl who was saying, Professor Rao, it's all very well for you to say what you do, but you don't know my boss. And her boss was he was a hedge fund zillionaire, and he was not very tall, medium height, slightly portly, and totally unrestrained in his behavior. So when he got mad at someone, he'd pull himself up to his full height. He'd, thrust his face into the face of the person he was mad at, and his face would get red, and he'd start shouting and use profane language, and bits of bits of spit would fly out and fall wherever they did. Say, Professor Rao, you don't know what I faced, and I can't wait for my bonus to clear, because the moment my bonus check is cleared, I'm resigning out of there. And so I told her, listen, it's fine. If that's what you want to do, you can. But you've got a significant amount of time and effort invested in this company, and do you really want to walk away from all of that? She said, what's the alternative? Like, I won't put up with this, crap anymore. So I told her a story. I told her that when her boss was having an episode like that and shouting, he's just a kid throwing a tantrum. She was completely unconvinced. So I told her a story. When my kids were younger, we went to Disney World, and we were waiting in line for an attraction. And there was a kid in line who must have been 7, 8 years old. And he was bothering all the others in the line. He had sticky fingers, and he'd go out and touch them with sticky fingers. So they didn't like being touched by sticky fingers. And they'd look at the father accusingly, and he'd be embarrassed. So he'd grab the child and hold him tight. But when he grabbed the child and held him tight, the child would start crying loudly. So I let him go, and then he'd go start touching people with sticky fingers. Just an uncomfortable situation. Then all of a sudden, his mother appeared, and with this wonderful intuition that mothers have, she said, she looked behind his behavior and said, he's hungry, and she produced food. And in less than 10 minutes, there was a wonderful transformation in this child from being a pain in the ass and everybody else's asses. He was the joy of the client, laughing with everyone, kidding around, and everybody enjoyed seeing him. Remarkable transformation happened in less than 10 minutes. So I told the story my student, who looked at it, could understand what it's about. And then a few days later, she did something which irritated the boss, and he did what he did. He thrust his face into her and stood up to his full height and started shouting, and bits of spit started flying. And all of a sudden, what I said popped into her mind, and it was so apropos that this was a kid having a tantrum that she couldn't help herself. She just laughed. And it was as if she had slapped him in the face. What did you do? She doesn't remember what she said, but she does remember that in that instant there was a transformation in her head. And he went from being an ogre to just an overgrown kid. And the moment there was a transformation in her head, there was also a change in the relationship. And he continued behaving exactly as he had with the others, but he didn't ever shout at her again. 6 months later, she got another job or something and moved out, and the affair fell away. So the point I'm trying to make, Alan, is that when there is a change between your ears, that change reflects itself in the outside world very, very, very fast. So most of us think my life is unsatisfactory. What I have to do is change the world around. And I'm not saying that there isn't work you have to do to change the world around, but I'm saying there's much more work you have to do between your ears. And when you make the change there, you will find that it reflects itself out in the outside world faster than you can imagine. So if you want to change the world you're living in, start with what's between your ears. Much, much more effective and efficient.
I will say the first 3-day weekend I went to your program, I met so many nice people and had intimate conversations with people that I never thought I would have. And then coming back a month later, when we had journaled for a month and done these exercises, each of these people, I went to them and said, what's happened with your biggest problem? And I would say 2/3 of them said, oh, I just decided it's not a problem anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I came to Professor Rao because I had this big problem, and I just decided it's not a problem. So
Yeah.
that's quite a testament to your the way you lay things out.
And can I make an unscheduled announcement, Alan? It just occurred to me that I really enjoy talking to your group so much that I'm seriously contemplating maybe I should offer a version of Creativity and Personal Mastery to your group, and maybe right there in Tampa if they're interested. So if there are enough people interested, will you simply announce it, ask them to shoot their details over to you, and when I'm ready to offer it, which could happen later this year or early next year, I'll be ready, able, and willing to conduct it just for members of your group. So just throwing out there, if there is interest, have them reach out, identify themselves to you, and we'll pick it up from there. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Maybe this would be a 1 day or a 2 day, or just see what the interest is.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to do that because that I would benefit greatly from attending it.
Okay.
All right, let me do another polling question. Josh, can we do it? The next polling question? All right. So this one, let's see here. We're going to talk a little bit about mental chatter.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sri Kumar, just to introduce this, and you could pick any one of A, B, C, or D. A, our mental chatter is involuntary and unstoppable. It just happens. B, it can be studied to better understand our unique mental models and why we think the way we think. C, 85% or more of it is negative and unsightly, in my opinion. And D, understanding our mental chatter is a key to the kingdom of happiness and effectiveness. So anybody can choose A, B, C, or D, and then we'll let Sri Kumar tell us a little bit about mental chatter, because I think it's just one of the legs of the table of
Absolutely. It's so much a part of it. Mental chatter is an internal monologue that you have going on in your head all the time. It begins when you get up in the morning, is with you right through the day, is with you right now, when out of politeness and courtesy you ought to be listening to my chatter instead of your chatter, and is with you right through at night. And sometimes it's so loud it prevents you from going to sleep. It's the kind of thing that goes, there's the alarm bell. Do I want to get up? I don't want to get up. Let me hit the snooze button. Why do I have to go to work? I really hate what I do. Oh, there's that project that's due. And that idiot was supposed to get me all the data I needed and he still hasn't. Why are people so unreliable? And you go ahead and say, oh my God, I've got X amount to pay in taxes, and I wish I didn't have to pay that much in taxes. Why do I have to do that? I got a lousy accountant. Maybe I should change my accountant. That stuff that's going on all the time, that's mental chatter. It's so much a part of your life that until I explicitly drew it to your attention, you probably didn't even recognize you had this going on. It's like an unwelcome relative who's shown up to your house and you can't throw him out. So what do? You live your life as best you can despite your mental chatter. You ignore it, you suppress it, you work around it, you do what you can. Big mistake. The reason it's a big mistake is we create our lives with our mental chatter. Let me repeat that. We create our lives with our mental chatter and our mental models, which I'll get to shortly. So we think we're living in a real world, but we're not living in a real world. We're living in a construct. We created it. We're all living in a matrix, only this isn't a matrix created by an alien civilization out to enslave us. It's something we created with our mental chatter. But having created it, we then experience it as we have created it. That's the important point. We experience it as we've created it. And this is a hugely liberating concept, because if you don't like the life you're living in and it's a construct, then you can deconstruct the parts of it that aren't working for you and build it up again. But if you live in a real world and you don't like it, you're screwed. Grin and bear it. But because you live in a construct, that's liberating. I don't like my life. Fine. I constructed it. I'm going to deconstruct the parts of it I don't like, build it up again. do something that I like better, and lo and behold, your life has improved right there. And this is a process that you're going to do over and over and over again. This is a rest of your life solution I've given you. And I'll prove it to you right now. One of the more powerful parables from the Buddha, one of the more powerful teachings of the Buddha is the parable of the second arrow. And in the parable of the second arrow, Buddha is speaking to Ananda, his disciple, and he says, Ananda, if an arrow would hit you in the arm, would it not be very powerful, very painful? Ananda not say, yes, Lord, it would be very painful. And if a second arrow would hit you exactly where the first arrow hit you, would it not be even more painful? Yes, Lord, it would be even more painful. And the Buddha asked, why then do you shoot the second arrow? Now that needs a little explanation, so I'll tell you a story. There was a woman, and very good mother, and her son grew up to be 16, and we got a provisional driver's license. And one day he comes up to his mom and says, "Hey, Mom, I'm getting together with a group of friends of mine, and I have to take the car. Can I take the car?" And she said, "Of course not. You just got your driver's license. How can you take the car? Where do you have to go? I'll drop you." "No, you don't understand. I'm getting together with a group of friends. You can't be there. It's very important you not be there." "Yeah, fine. If I can't be there, I can't be there. There's Uber, there's Lyft. What would you like?" No. You don't understand. I have to take the car, and you have to not be there." And she says, "Ridiculous. Of course not." But you know how children are. He begged, he pleaded, he wheedled, and bit by bit, she felt herself giving way. And he's growing up. He has to show he has a car and independent is important to him. And he lose face with his friends if he can't take the car and so on. So, she took promises. "You're not going to drink." "No, I'm not going to drink." "You're going to call." "Yes, I'm going to call." "You'll be back by 10 o'clock. I'll be back by 10 o'clock. So finally, reluctantly, she gives him the car keys. And of course, once he gets the car keys, it gets all about his promises. He doesn't call, has too many beers, misses curfew. On the way back, he gets into an accident, in the hospital, being operated on, and his mother is right there with him while he's being operated on. And then when he's wheeled to the recovery room, she dashes home so she can have a shower and change and go back to the hospital. And a friend calls. And a friend says, "How could you possibly have let him take the car? You're not a mother, you're a murderer." Now you're shocked, right, that a friend would say something like that at this juncture? But you'd probably be less shocked if I said it wasn't what a friend said, it's what she told herself. That is the second arrow. It's bad enough being in the situation that she was in with a son who's recovering and, God knows what by damage, long-term damage he has suffered. Does it make matters better to tell herself that she is a lousy mother, maybe even a murderer? Of course not. But she does it all the time. The interesting thing to remember about the second arrow is the second arrow is always delivered by means of mental chatter. Always. For most of my coaching clients, if I could get them to stop at the second arrow, they'd be way ahead of the game. They're on their fifth, sixth, or 285th arrows before they recognize what they're doing for themselves. That's how important it is. In fact, I'm making a blanket statement to everybody on this call. No matter what situation you're facing right now, whatever situation is of concern to you right now, your mental chatter about that situation is making it at least an order of magnitude worse. No matter what the situation is that's concerning you, your mental chatter about that situation is making it at least an order of magnitude worse. "Oh, I've got unexpected taxes due. Oh my God, I have taxes due. How am I going to meet that? What's going to happen to my business? How am I going to maintain my lifestyle?" And you can go off on that journey, and next thing you know, your joy has left your life, and you're worried. There's a wonderful saying by Mark Twain, and it's both very funny and very profound. He says, "I've suffered a great many tragedies in my life, most of which never happened." That's funny, but it's also incredibly profound. It all stems from mental chatter. That's how and why it is such a powerful concept.
And I know that you are coaching a number of very, very successful people, Fortune 400 executives, etc. Do they have the same mental chatter problems, or is it worse for them?
Higher up you go, the worse the situation is. They're
Mm.
so wound up with their mental chatter. And their mental chatter is a very high level. It simply means the number of decisions they're taking have many more zeros than you and I construct. But otherwise, the principle is exactly the same. Oh boy, do they have mental chatter.
And they're just as
All of our
surprised.
politicians who are driving America collectively into the ground, their mental chatter is off the scale.
Mm. Okay, so how does this play into the mental model?
Mental chatters and mental models are related. A mental model is a notion you have that this is the way the world works. And you've got dozens of mental models. You've got a mental model for how do I find a person to marry? How do I keep my marriage fresh? How do I bring up my children? How do I find a job? How do I find a good person to fill this slot that I have? You've got dozens of mental models, possibly hundreds of mental models. Some of these models may be in conflict with each other, and you may or may not be aware of the conflict. The problem is not that you have mental models. Mental models are wonderful devices. They help you save time. They help you make sense of unstructured situations. They're great. The problem is not that you have mental models. The problem is you don't recognize that you have mental models. You think this is the way the world works, but this is not the way the world works. This is your model of this is the way the world works. And the more you believe in your model that this is the way the world works, the more evidence you seem to get that this, in fact, is the way the world works. And very soon you build a silo around yourself that's impossible to break out of. The problem is not that you have mental models. The problem is that you're not aware that you have mental models. And your mental models give rise to mental chatter, and your mental chatter reinforces your mental model. So it's kind of a recursive loop which keeps coming back. And together they strengthen it into your view of the world. I'll give you a business example right now from one of my coaching clients who was dealing with a partner, and actually he was not dealing with a partner. He was dealing with a partner's widow because the partner died. And while the partner was a good friend, his wife, his widow, definitely is not. And she's making unreasonable demands, and demanding financial compensation and a whole bunch of things. Everybody's all mad at her because she's several times walked back on promises and so on. And when my client started talking with her, I had a long discussion with him. So he began by not addressing her betrayal of agreements, not addressing her unreasonableness, just talked about his friend, her husband. And, he commiserated with her in terms of, how difficult it must have been, all of a sudden being single and what's impact that's going to have on the children, how you bring it up, and the children's education. And he genuinely had empathy for her. And he painted her as a person who's reasonable and you could actually have a productive conversation and agreement with, despite the fact that his own record indicated no. And funnily enough, they made significant progress on the issues that were dividing them, and there was a spirit of amity that came in. Because in his mind, he no longer had the mental model that this is an unreasonable person who breaks promises and cannot be trusted. And in his mind, he had the model, hey, here is a person who suffered a grievous loss, and she is the widow of someone who used to be a good friend of mine, and I ought to do what I can to help her cope with this difficult situation. Very often in negotiations, you're stuck with people who are unreasonable, demanding, and so on. And the more you see them as unreasonable, demanding, the more, in fact, that model is validated by the universe. But if, on the other hand, you place them in the position of, he's a reasonable human being who's going through some things, and what he's going through, I cannot say. So let me try and understand that. And more often than not, you'll find that you can have a way through that is somewhat acceptable. Whatever you have in your head reflects itself in the universe outside, Alan. That's another of the learnings that I want to. You never see the world as it is. You always see the world as you are.
That's deep.
Yep. Yes, it is.
So how do you go about changing a mental model? You know it's flawed, but you're stuck with it.
The first thing, the most important, and in many cases the most difficult thing, is to recognize that you have mental models and identify the mental models that you have. And sometimes you've been so stuck in a way of thinking that you don't even recognize that something you have is a mental model and not reality. Which is why, if you remember, when you did the alternate reality exercise in my program, you did it in a small group. Because when you do it in a small group and you trust the members of that small group, many of them will instantly perceive a mental model that you have that you didn't even know you had. You've got blind spots in which you can park a tractor trailer, but they're blind spots for you. And somebody else who isn't stuck where you are can easily perceive that you have a mental model and it's not serving you well. And then point it out to you, and then it's your job to identify it, say, oh my God, here it is, explore the dimensions of that, and replace it with a mental model which serves you better.
How many mental models can you change at a time?
Don't try to make overwhelming changes, because that's something I've seen so often. Very often people say, oh my God, there's this problem and that problem, and they try to craft alternate mental models by the boatful and change them. Don't, you'll come a cropper. My advice is, don't even try changing all your mental models. Yeah, you got lots of mental models and they're, flat out wrong, and some of them may not be serving you well, but you can't make wholesale changes, and life's too short to wrestle with that. Pick mental models which are really handicapping you in an area of your life that's really important to you, and never work on more than one at a time. To properly identify a mental model, replace it with a better one, and stick with it until it becomes a part of who you are, could take anywhere from a few weeks to 3 or 4 months. Stick with it until you have a high degree of confidence that your new alternate reality is your accepted reality. And then and only then pick another area of your life and repeat the process. Don't try to make wholesale changes in your life. One
Sure.
at
Very good. All right, let's go one more polling question. And this one is, are mental models A, and by the way, the answer is D, all of the above. A, are unique in the way we view reality. B, can be improved gradually with time and effort. C, are the foundation for how we think about and experience our lives. And D, all of the above. And it is very interesting to sit down and say, what are my mental models? How would my mental model be different if I change how I view it, how I approach it, how I handle it? And then to talk with others in a small group to come up with ideas. You can learn from their problems and they will learn from yours. The idea of a Tampa weekend would be amazing. How are we doing, Josh? Right. Are we good to back? Okay. So Sri Kumar, with about 8 minutes left.
Are there any questions, Alan? If there are any questions from your group, I'd be very happy to address those.
One is based on the Tesla incident. I would like to comment on my basic premise that you need money to make the repairs. Can money solve all of the problems that we have?
This is something I get very often. And I want to share two quotes about money, which I find hilarious, and it's there. So, one is, I know money doesn't bring happiness, but I'd like to find that out for myself, which I think is wonderful. And the second one is, I know money doesn't bring happiness, but it allows you to choose where you will be unhappy. And I think both of those are fantastic. And the answer to that is no, money does not bring happiness. And also, by the way, that money does ease some of the blows of life. So you got a Tesla and you got $500,000 in the bank, and the prospect of getting it repaired is, okay, pain in the ass, but I can do it. Or you got a Tesla which is all banged up, and you have no money in the bank, and you're maxed out on your credit card. It's a different situation. But the fact still remains that regardless of whether you're flush with cash or scraping the bottom of the barrel, does being unhappy, upset, and riled up, does it make the situation any better? That is the question to ask yourself. If you're flush with the bank, then you're flush with money in the bank, you say, okay, and I'm going to have my chauffeur or assistant pick up my Tesla, get it to the body shop, have it repaired, come back, and I won't even notice what's left in my bank account. And if you don't have that, you might say, okay, I can't afford to have that done right now. So you know what? I'll have to get used to driving a banged up Tesla. Maybe I'll get the mirror repaired because I need that to drive. But apart from that, I'll forget about the scratches and so on. And it's a lesson that you can learn to not let such things like that bother you. And you can decide how you're going to view it. You can view it as, I got a banged up Tesla, and it's a mistake for me to allow this to ruin my perfect day. And I'm going to treat this as a lesson given to me by the universe to not let things like that affect me. So I'm going to use it as a challenge to get there. And all of a sudden, you might find you've opened up a door that leads to a whole range of changes that you never thought about. I was reading a book recently, and this talked about someone who is an heir to one of the great American fortunes. And he quite literally gave all of his money away. And when I say all of the money, I mean all of the money. No, let me buy a condo for myself so I'm safe, and then I'll have a little bit left in the bank for emergency. And then his father asked him, hey, listen, what are you going to do if one of your kids has a medical emergency? And he looked at his father and said, well, then I'll know what 90% of Americans are facing.
Wow.
It's not easy to be something like that, but I'm simply pointing out as we are very firmly hedged in certain ways of thinking. These are our mental models, that this is the way it's got to be. And perhaps it doesn't. And perhaps you need something happen to give you a real external jolt before you can start saying, perhaps I should revisit the things that I believe so strongly in. You can resist that, in which case you can continue being your sad, sorry, miserable, unhappy self. Or you can say, I'm going to make a change in that. And I'm going to decide how I'm going to look at this matter. Well, that's a good question.
So the last question that I see here that we have time for, the person says, well, who am I? Am I the person who's generating the mental chatter? I'm the person who's listening to the mental chatter. I'm the person who's having the temper tantrum. I'm the person who's watching me have the temper tantrum. Who am I?
That is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful question. And the answer, to borrow from your polling, is all of the above. I'm the person who's having the tantrum. I am the person who's watching the person have the tantrum. I am the observer. And that's what, and this can really take it. This is actually, an entire days or a couple of days question right there. But the most important question you can ask yourself is, who am I? And I'm not this body, mind, intellect complex that I think I am. I'm Alan Gassman. I'm an estate and tax attorney, and I am in Tampa, Florida, and I have 2 children. That's the story that you're telling yourself. That's not who you really are. Who you really are is pure consciousness, pure awareness, playing this role of Alan Gassman. And if you identify with the body, mind, intellect complex called Alan Gassman, there'll be good days and bad days, and ups and downs, and all manner of problems. But if you're pure consciousness playing the role of Alan Gassman, every day is a blast.
Wow,
And
that's pretty good.
that's a damn good question. Make a note of the person who asked that one. I'd like to speak to that person.
I will put you in touch with her.
Yes, please.
I'm going to do a last polling question here for those of you who are CPAs giving credit. And you'll find this information in Sri Kumar's books. In each of us, and by the way, the answer is D, as in dog, because in each of us is a good dog that can be fed good things to be better, kinder, and more giving. And in each of us is a wolf. And if you feed the wolf, you can be more and more mean-spirited, angry, and unethical. Third, there is a mental model that events can cause happiness or sadness within us. And D, in each of us is an innate sense of happiness. It's our origin of being. So the answer D, all of the above. Sorry that there's some grammar errors in this polling question. Not the best polling question we ever did. So Sri Kumar, you're like a snowflake, because every time I work with you, every time I deal with you, I learn something new. You say something in a slightly different, insightful way. Every single interview, everything on YouTube, thousands of them, are all fascinating. Does anything come to mind to close this nice hour that we?
I always have a wonderful time with your group, and if you want, I'll be happy to come on again in a couple of months or so. But I do
Yep.
want you to know that I have a new person on my team now, Kat Jovi, and one of the things that she's tasked with is I'm going to be having my podcast start in another month or so. So there'll be regular podcasts, there'll also be long form video chats, and I'm going to have a new video channel and Instagram. So all kinds of more material will be coming. So
Fantastic.
alerting you to that. And as I said, I am serious. I think I would like to do something in Tampa. So if you could let your group know that if they're interested, they should reach out to you. And finally, last but not least, can you share the chat of this conversation with me?
Sure. Yeah. And this video will be on YouTube in about 4 hours.
Oh,
I'll send
okay.
you the link, but then I'm gonna also cut it up into a few different videos, because I think we had some
Absolutely.
really
Yes,
nice
do that.
sessions there for sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Sally Allen, and you have a terrific weekend.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. For those of you who are going to stay with us, I'm going to bore you now with my software program. It's come a long way, and I'm looking for beta viewers. By the way, Sri Kumar Rao is an amazing guy. And I will go ahead and set up a Tampa conference. So this is April, so it'll be probably June or July. It'll be a weekend. It'll be inexpensive. But now, for those of you remaining, is there anyone remaining? Yes, there are over a couple hundred of you remaining. So you've probably seen my software, but you see it looks a lot different. We've come a long way with it. I hope that we'll be in the market in about 4 weeks. And if you're interested in being a beta tester and using this for yourself for a couple of weeks, we'd really like some people to give it a workout. So let me show you. First, I'm going to give you about a 5-minute tour. So if you don't know what it is, you'll know what it is. And then I'm going to give you a much more detailed tour. So what we have here is a married couple, and you can put your firm name and your personal name on this, and you can put the date of birth, and then you can put the year of death, or it will tell you the probable year of death. And you can have one spouse or two spouses. So you can do this for a single person now or for a married couple. So I am showing it for a married couple. And you can, here on the left, provide information on their annual savings or for a term of years savings, or their outgo, if they're saving their income or if they're spending from their savings. And then you can tell about the portability, which I'll discuss later, whether you think the estate tax exemption is going to go down to half in 2026, what you think the inflation rate is, the value of their residences, the value of their investment assets, the growth rate, how much you think they would like to put in a credit shelter trust on the first death, annual gifting information, life insurance information before and after planning, and whether they'll make a big gift to a trust and do an installment sale. So it doesn't take long to put all this information in, because mostly you're arrowing up and arrowing down, or you could have a secretary put the information in. And based upon the information, oops, I've just messed up. I have the screen closed, and I apologize. All right. There's still 160 people left. I can see why 40 left. Let me start over. I do apologize. What you see here is the software program, and in the middle, you have Bob and Mary Sample. And I was discussing on the left-hand side, I can program in the value of their residence, the value of their investments, the growth rate, what their tax rate is, what their investment expenses are, what their life insurance situation is, what their annual gifting situation is, how much their income is. All of that is easily downloaded on the left-hand side. And then in the middle, you have the display, which shows you the results of the planning. By the way, we now have this on Apple computers, on iPads, and you can even do this on your phone. It is web-based. So based upon this scenario, on the right-hand side, if they're in a common accident tomorrow on their vacation, I click there, and you see no estate tax and $23 million going to the survivor. On the other hand, if they do no planning and they live for 19 years based upon the scenario I've put in there, then there will be $8 million of estate tax, $23 million passing to the survivor. And there's the time value of money. If they use a credit shelter trust on the first death, then I click here, and now their estate tax is down to $7 million, and the beneficiaries receive $23 million, which is certainly a little different. So then If they use annual gifting, I click annual gifting, and that gift trust will have 2.6 million. The estate tax comes down a little more. Then if they go with the changes recommended with life insurance that you may put in there, it will show them, it will show you the life insurance situation. And then finally, if they do an installment sale to a grantor trust, it will show you the result, and that will have no estate tax in this situation if they also do the installment sale. Now, it's interdynamic in that if I change any item, like let's say I go to a $20,500,000 net worth and an 8% rate of return, it's instantly changed all of these scenarios. So you can actually dial things up and dial things down to get to the result you want to get to. So they need more installment sale based on what I just added in order to zero out the federal estate tax. There are 3 different views. I've shown you what we call the trust logistical view, but I can also have a timeline view. So this timeline view shows me each year, 2015 through 2041, what the estate tax would be on the second death. And what we're showing you is that right now we're showing the death here in 2039. But if they were to live longer or shorter, this is the estate tax. But with the installment sale, for example, when I click there, you can see what the estate tax would be each year. It's larger in the beginning, so you may have to do a larger installment sale than you would have thought if you were only looking at the end. Then I have an annual amounts view, which when it's working will tell you for each item what happened each year. So if you're curious as to what happened with the annual gifting part of it, it will give you the actual numbers so you can see what's behind it. And then the details, this is the basic spreadsheet for each of the scenarios if you want to see that. Now, probably the most popular feature, which continues to improve, is the generate client letter. I click on generate client letter, and now in the past you could show all scenarios. In the past you had to show all scenarios, but you may mix the client up with that, and some of these things may not apply. You may not want to do annual gifting. You may not want to do life insurance. So then you may want to show the timeline, you may want to show the details, you may not want to. So I'll click show timelines. Then I click on generate client letter. Now it's going to take a little while to draft the letter. It's drafting the letter. It's at 10% now. It's at 15%. It's at 25%. The letter's coming along. It's actually Santa Claus writing it really fast. And the letter's just about done, so I don't have to keep saying it's just about done. And there it is. Let me find it. Here's the letter. It's a Word document, and it lays out all of those facts that are in the inputs. It also gives you a brief summary of what is in the illustration, so you can look at that first page and know when you did it and what you were doing. You can also type in notes that would go onto that page, and then it shows you no planning with that view and that view if you want it, bypass trust, etc., and with an explanation for you and the client. Going back here, I will just mention before I go in and give you a deeper dive that the installment sale calculator is still there and still very useful. in order to do this is a completely separate module where you go into the details of a single person doing an installment sale with the ability to show what happens every year with the ability to do a conventional sale versus a self-canceling sale, and the ability to export this to an Excel spreadsheet. So once you have your numbers set up with all these variables, you actually can have a downloaded Excel spreadsheet, there it is, that you can then further customize for the client by showing their spending, their savings, what the bar mitzvah is going to cost, what the wedding's going to cost, all of those things as you may wish. So I will close that now. Now, one thing I'm showing you is, oops, I accidentally closed it. Did I lose my settings? And the answer is no, I didn't. I can go back to estateview.link and it comes back up with the settings. There's the 20,500,000. So boy, is that internet smart. Now, the second thing I have here that isn't working yet, I don't think, but I see that Kevin, the programmer, the extremely brilliant programmer, has started the Cupert calculator. Oh my gosh, there it is. Zip code and the transfer date and interest rate, age, current value of the house, growth rate of the house, how much a rent would be if you start renting it, and then there's the Cupert results. Remainder interest, that's a 6%, 61% of the value of the home is your gift. Wow, good. So anyway, that's a start. We'll have the Cupert working pretty soon. Okay, now back to Estate View. Oops, forward to Estate View. That is the overall 5-minute orientation. So now I'm going to show you just more detail on the input and how this impacts. By the way, at the bottom, you've got fit with, which helps you put the picture so you can actually see it. So for example, we're going to be improving this, but you're able to see what you're doing. And as you move this back and forth, it's bigger and smaller. But going over the inputs, which explain how things work, it's very easy to put the firm name and your name there, client's name. Now you could just put the number, how old they are, or if you want to put the date of birth, you can, and it will tell you how old they are. Did you know computers could do that? You can go with male or female, and when you click on tobacco, it just shows you a shorter life expectancy, or it should. Yep, shows you lose 2 years of life expectancy if you are a tobacco user. Then how much lifetime exclusion the client has used. Most clients have not used any of their exclusion. Then the actuarial date of death, and then the date of death that you want to put in there. You might have the first spouse die in 10 years and the second spouse die in 20, whatever you decide. Then the annual savings or outgo. Let's say that this is an executive. He is 70 years old. He plans to work another 3 years to age 73. So he plans to save $500,000 a year. And then at age 74, he's going to retire and he's going to start spending $400,000 a year more than he earns. So that's going to come out of his investments, but you can go ahead and set that up. So then if this is a single person, you click deceased or non-applicable. And now I'm running numbers on just one person, but he may be a widower. So I can put down whether he's going to have a portability allowance and how much the portability allowance is. So if he's a widower and his spouse died and left a $4,500,000 portability allowance, she didn't use that, then I can show that number. But I can also point out that if he remarries, there will be no portability allowance if his new spouse dies before him, so I can click there if I don't want to show a portability allowance. And look at the difference in the numbers. They're huge between if he has a large portability allowance of 5 million and assume that's a 9 million estate tax, but assume no portability allowance, 10 million of estate tax. All right, so then the exemption adjustment, is the exemption going to come down in half or not in 2026? Then how fast is the residence going to grow? And we'll have this integrated with the CUPERT in case they do a qualified personal residence. That's coming. Then what is the business and investment worth? 20 million growing at 8.23%. Now, let's just say that this is an S corporation and the S corporation makes $1 million a year. So I'm going to put here $1.5 million because he's making 500, but plus the S corp's making $1 million a year. So that's $1.5 million. And then doesn't want to do $1.5 million. Let's say $1.25 million. And then here, this is going to go up to 625. So I'll move this to 625, or I could even type it, 625,000, because of that S corporation. Of course, that makes the numbers more challenging, doesn't it? So, and there's a reason I did that. I'll go back to married, so I think the system is more impressive with married. And now the maximum bypass trust is 22,810,000, which is a pretty good thing here. Then I've got spouse one for both for the life insurance, and I'm not going to go through the life insurance, but what I'll tell you is for each spouse, as of now, we only have one policy per spouse. We're going to be adding multiple policies, but we're able to say before planning and we need to give it a death benefit. So before planning, during the first 10 years, the death benefit would be 800,000, and then after that, the death benefit would go down to 400,000, for example. And there's the premium. And we could do this pre-planning without the life insurance trust and post-planning with the life insurance trust. So then when we go to the estate planning module, before planning, clicking discounted gifting, that's before planning. And then when you click after planning, you see that it changes what happens. And you could put before planning no life insurance if they have no life insurance, and post planning put the specifics of the life insurance. And it will help you determine whether paying the premiums is worth getting the death benefit. And of course, if you do term life insurance and you die after the term runs, then it'll actually hurt you to do the life insurance. Okay, then finally, the installment sale to an irrevocable trust. So the first thing is, does the client, and I can go ahead and zero this out just to do that. So I zeroed everything out. Now there is no installment sale. So I'll just play the installment sale box there. And there's with no installment sale. Let me get to the right size. I'd like to make it a little bit bigger there. Maybe a little smaller. All right. So, and I'll move that over there so you can see what's going on. Well, this will need a little work. But anyway, the installment sale is right there in the middle. You see the purple boxes, that's your installment sale. Sorry it's taking me so long to get you to be able to see it. So I'm not sure why the installment sale has 3.5 million. Oh, because of the income. Let's get the income down. Okay, so right now there's no installment sale. Nothing has happened with the installment sale. But let's say that the client would just like to make a gift, $1 million gift to a trust to see what would happen. So they're looking at $9 million of estate tax. What would happen if they made $1 million gift to a trust? Well, the estate tax would come down to $8.6 million. What would happen would be $1 million is in the trust, and it would grow at the growth rate we've stated to $1.6 million after the first death, $1.7 million after the second death. The second spouse is only living 1 extra year, and there's no note. It's just a one-time gift. Now, what if they also put $15 million into an LLC and transferred the 99% non-voting member interest in that LLC to a trust, assuming a 30% discount? So first they put 15 million into this LLC, then they value the 99% non-voting member interest and sell that in exchange for a note. So before they do this, they have 15 million of assets. After they do it, they're going to have $10 million in the form of a note. So all I do here is I want to put 15 million in to the LLC. So I click here, or I can put to here 15 million. And it automatically tells me that at a 30% discount, the note given in exchange for this 99% interest will be 10,500,000. And the seed capital gift, if I want to have a 10% seed capital gift, which is pretty much the rule of thumb in the industry, I would have a $1,050,000 first year seed capital amount. Now, what if I wanted to put in 16 million? Well, I could click here to 16 million, and it now tells me my note is 11,200,000, and my first year gift is $1,120,000. Now, what's the interest rate on the note? I can click on look up applicable federal rate. It's going to take me to a landing page that Kevin's still working on, which will show me a summary of the applicable federal rate. But for now, it's just taking me to the IRS website for that. And of course, as you know, you can use the lowest of this month, the month before, or the month before that. But let's just say that that is 4.25%. How long is the note? We'll say it's going to be 20 years, and that the client will pay the income tax on the earnings of the trust. And remember I said that that S Corp makes $1 million a year? Well, when I click this up to $1 million a year, the state tax sure goes away fast, and their estate will be lower if they pay the tax. It does allow me, though, to toggle off grantor trust status. So when would I toggle off grantor trust status? I can pick the year when I toggle off grantor trust status. Otherwise, and that would be the year that the trust starts paying its own tax. Now, it may be that the client says this company's not going to make $1 million a year forever. It'll make $1 million a year for maybe 5 years. And after that, we think it'll make less than $1 million a year. So you're able to go ahead and tell it how many years it's going to be able to make that kind of money, and then reduce it thereafter. Next, is there going to be a guarantee fee? If the first year gift is only $200,000 or $299,000, then typically you would have somebody guarantee the note so that it would have economic viability. So maybe the guarantee fee would be $5,000 a year, or a percentage of the note. Maybe it would be 2% of the note. So, and maybe it would be for 10 years. And that guarantee fee perhaps would go to the gift trust, and that way you can show the economic result of it. So that gets our estate tax down to 0. Now I can go to the timeline and see that there would be no estate tax in any year. There's no red anywhere. Now the client may say, well, how much installment sale do I need? Well, we could click this down until we see red. And there's not going to be red for a while, apparently, which is nice. Then we could click up the consumer price index, the estate tax rate. Maybe you're in a state that has a 5% estate tax rate. So we can click up the estate tax rate. Let me give you a timeline. This would be better if I could bring the scenarios in, if we maybe are with annual gifting. So you see a little bit of red there, but with the state tax, it's going to be higher. Okay, and then something else I want to show. They say, okay, this isn't so bad. My children will get $38 million in 19 years. Well, that's in today's dollars, but with inflation, what they're going to receive is only going to be worth, oh, I'm sorry, with inflation, they'll have 38 million, but without inflation, we're talking about 80 million. So I apologize. I've been showing you these numbers with inflation adjusted. Let's go back and look at them uninflation adjusted in today's dollars. Current planning, no estate tax if they die today. No planning, estate tax in 19 years, 17 million. With the bypass trust, the bypass trust receives 12 million on the first death, has 13 million by the second death, estate tax down to 10 million. Annual gifting brings it down a little bit to 14 million. Then if we do discounted gifting using a 30% discount on what we're gifting, brings down to 9 million too. Life insurance brings it up because we don't have the life insurance in the trust, and then installment sale bringing it down to 0. And again, how much do I need if I'm going to do the installment sale to bring it down to 0? Not that much. I only really have to do an installment sale for this couple of $4,250,000. But if I'm only going to do a part of the company, I will have to adjust this down. So I'll have to figure out if I'm only going to do half the company, then that would be 500,000. So you do have to manually get to the right number if you're gifting S corporation stock. If you're gifting something that's just growing like a stock and bond portfolio or a real estate investment trust portfolio, then that could be at 0. And then before I print my letter, I can say, this was with zero income going into the installment sale trust because we are only using investments, not the S corporation. All right, then I can go to generate client letter and I can show no planning, bypass trust, discounted gifting, and the installment sale. Click the generate client letter, and here we go. Okay, there's the letter. And here you see we will be improving the first part of the letter. It looks a little awkward, but you see where I typed in this was with the zero income going into the installment sale, and then the letter came out as expected. Okay, I do apologize that I showed this with inflation. That kind of confused the numbers, but I'll try to get better at this. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at some of the questions. The first one, can you share screen? Oops, sorry. I do apologize for that. What's the cost of the program? Have not decided yet. Still talking with advisors. It's certainly going to be a lot more than the $99.95 because I do have a lot of costs. Kevin is wonderful, but not inexpensive. Cost of annual maintenance to be determined. David says much better now. The insurance side is not providing any policy loans. That would be good. Well, maybe in the future. That's a good idea. I'd love to do split dollar. Glenn is volunteering to beta test. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch with you. Are you feeling okay? No dummy today? Yeah, I just didn't want to take away from Sri Kumar's program. So I didn't use the dummy today. Sorry about that. But the hand may talk. All right. Okay, we are providing large yearly tax-free loans. Thank you, David. Okay. Does the software assume the estate tax exemption to be 12 million or does it change? Well, that's a good idea. We can make it change. That's something I've got to mention to Kevin. What table is used for life expectancy? I don't know. I'll find out. But what we want to use is a realistic table, not necessarily the 10 or 20-year-old treasury tables. Okay, well, that concludes what I wanted to do today. I'm very, very thankful to the 99 of you who stuck it out to the end. If you do want to do a beta testing, just email me at agassman, A-G-A-S-S-M-A-N, at gassmanpa.com, and then you'll have use of the software at least for a couple of weeks for free. And then I just ask that you play with it, use it for your client situation, and let me know what you thought. Thank you so much to Sri Kumar Rao, a wonderful, wonderful friend and a really good thinker. And I hope that the rest of your day is wonderful because you decided you wanted it to be wonderful and will not take unwonderful for an answer. Thank you.